Hey everyone, Chris here with Zone Zero California, and behind me is the PCH Highway, Pacific Coast Highway, leading into Malibu. We are essentially at the entrance to Malibu here, and of course, as we all know and remember from the fires in 2025 and years previous, Malibu is definitely a very high fire hazard severity zone. In fact, if you look at the map on CAL FIRE, it basically goes all the way down to PCH here, which is along the coast. It's a beautiful place to live. It's a beautiful scenic drive up PCH. But as we continue in this video series of going on the ground to these very high fire hazard severity zones, you'll see once we start driving into Malibu just how much of the homes on PCH itself were destroyed or gone. And it'll give you guys a sense of, you know, the kind of destruction that we're facing here in Malibu and California in general in these very high fire hazard severity zones. So of course, why are we doing this video series? Not just to take you, the viewer here, to give you a first-hand look at the damage. It's not really about the disaster porn here. It's really just to give you guys a better sense or idea of what these fire hazard severity zones are and just how far they extend into developed territory. Sometimes you might think that, you know, the fire hazard zones are restricted strictly to forests, and clearly that isn't the case. So these are what's known as wildland-urban interfaces. These are areas designed, or designated I should say, they've been designated as places where development and encroaching, you know, population growth is overlapping with, you know, wildlands that are in, again, very high fire hazard severity zones. So, of course, this is raising awareness about Zone Zero in general. These Zone Zero regulations are set to be published this coming month. Today's the last day of February. And we are expecting the final rules to be issued, at least at a state level, next month in March. Now, what we're seeing happen is that there's been more of a pushback, not just from residents, you know, complaining about the costs and the burden, which is a fair complaint. It's a very fair complaint. It's more about how different counties and cities with different levels of urban development are choosing rather to take into consideration their particular circumstances, meaning one set of rules given from the state applicable everywhere is not necessarily the best approach, because people in rural counties, homes in rural counties that have 100 feet of defensible space are quite different than places like Malibu or the Palisades or many parts of Los Angeles, San Diego, and other parts of the state where the houses are naturally just built closer together. So I think what we're going to see is a very broad set of rules and then more specific rules and regulations at the county and city levels that are going to be applicable to those jurisdictions, because a one-size-fits-all approach was definitely not the way to go. And I think that's a fair complaint. I think that's a fair assessment. So we're going to see what happens. This is a developing issue, but nevertheless, these Zone Zero regulations are the law of the land. They are the laws on the books. And what's going on there, just to explain it very briefly, and I know I've made some mistakes, I've misspoken in my last videos, so I'm going to start correcting the record now. The rules on the books apply to all new builds, and these are specifically for builds in very high fire hazard severity zones. Previously, I had stated that this eventually would apply to all buildings and structures in California within a few years, and it doesn't appear that that's actually the case. So I'd like to correct the record now, and I will correct the record moving forward to make sure that, you know, if I'm going to take the responsibility of being someone presenting the situation and trying to raise awareness, that I'm presenting like things that are factually accurate. So, you know, I apologize for any confusion from previous videos, and I will always make sure to make those corrections and acknowledge my mistakes regardless. So All new builds in these very high fire hazard severity zones must comply with Zone 0 regulations. What does that mean specifically? It means specifically you cannot use anything but Class A non-combustible materials. And when it comes to your landscaping, it must also adhere to certain thresholds, meaning you will be limited in the choice and style of landscaping, and you're going to be urged or probably even compelled to consider other types of building materials for your landscaping, such as gravel and pavers. So a lot less green and a lot more gray, unfortunately. Now, this has sort of been the source of a lot of the pushback and the complaints from the general public, especially in places like LA, where according to some studies, it appears that the shade produced by trees can reduce temperatures like by 50 degrees. I mean, you know, what might feel like 130 can be reduced to feeling like 80 degrees or something to that effect. Again, this is just from one article I've read. Now, I have been collecting and compiling all of these various resources, news articles, as well as like state agencies and all the players involved around this this movement, this you know, this fire prevention, fire hardening, and ultimately these Zone 0 rules in our school community. So I'd encourage you to come join us there. It's absolutely free to join, and you'll find just a centralized location of you know, resources and links and information and news articles that I've been compiling there, and I continue to work on that. So the link will be in the description. And I've also started a Reddit, because I feel like Reddit is also another place where we can get people to contribute to the conversation, because I think there's a lot of people out there in California, a lot of folks here who have experienced a lot of, like, you know, screwed up things, like dealing with insurance, dealing with state agencies, all kinds of headaches. And I feel like, you know, not only will your sharing your stories be able to help other people, but if it helps you feel better, getting it off your chest and venting, so be it. You know, I don't mind. I'm opening it up for that reason, for those reasons. So now again, okay, so let's get back to building materials in Zone 0, all right? So we mentioned landscaping. What else is it going to affect? Well, old wood fences and gates are definitely going to need to be replaced. So other things like decking will also need to be replaced. Now, fencing and decking have some overlap when it comes to the materials they use. So while your old redwood or cedar fences, gates, balconies, railings, decks, patios might need to be replaced, what they can be replaced with doesn't necessarily have to be like only metal, like steel or aluminum, or composite materials, right? Like, you know, composite decking, plastic, if you want to really call it that. It's not really plastic, excuse me. But, you know, just for a shorthand descriptive term, you know, that kind of material, maybe something similar to vinyl, right? Certain hardwoods, like for example, Kayu, Batu, have been approved by CAL FIRE for use. So you don't need to get completely away from wood in general. You just need to be aware of the type of wood that will be allowed. All right, so that's one tip for you there. Now, aside from landscaping, fencing, gates, and decks, you will have your siding and your roofing. A lot of times what I do is I drive around the neighborhoods I film these videos in, just to point out, A, how many houses will be affected, right, when it comes to landscaping, and also B, to point out where building materials like an old wood fence or gate would need to be replaced, or like how an older style home does have wood siding and maybe that might need to be replaced. I admit right now, the one thing I'm not as, you know, educated about is roofing, but I just partnered with a general contractor in Los Angeles this past week. So I'm looking forward to learning and sharing more of that information and sharing it here with you guys. So once again, my name's Chris. I'm with Zone 0 California. If you go to zone0california.com and get a hold of me there, reach out to me there, we'll be able to put you in touch with licensed contractors in your area. And of course, what we're doing is kind of trying to prioritize working with vendors who are on the approved list through the Fire Safe Council. I know I'd also misspoken in previous videos and said they were vendors approved by CAL FIRE. That's not accurate. It's the Fire Safe Council who has an approved vendors list. So my mistake there. But again, you know, I'm only human. We make mistakes, but I'm working hard to make sure that I'm as informed and as accurate as possible when presenting this information to you guys. So I'll leave it there, but we're gonna start taking a drive down Malibu. Today we're planning to hit parts of Ventura County, as well as other parts of LA County, to continue this series going on the ground into these very high fire hazard severity zones. So thanks again, and stay tuned for some footage. Hey guys, Chris here in the truck. Just turning around so I can head towards Malibu like I was saying earlier. One thing before we get going, one thing I wanted to remind everybody is that if you are east or north of Pacific Coast Highway into these mountains, the Santa Monica Mountains in Malibu, the entire mountain range is a very high fire hazard severity zone. So the entire, you know, anywhere in Malibu, you're pretty much in the red here. So that's just something I usually mention. You know I had started off the video by saying that, you know, everything down to PCH is considered red. Well, you know, conversely, everything up into the mountains and over the hills and into the valley, basically to the 101, is all very high fire hazard severity zone, red zone. So I'm going to turn around here, and then we'll take a drive, and I'll poke the camera outside of the car. Now you probably won't be able to hear me talk a lot because of the wind noise and stuff, and the road noise from PCH. So it'll just really be visual, but here we go. So right now we're right by the Getty Villa, basically where Malibu starts and the Palisades ends. So I even think parts of the Getty Villa were damaged, but here's the sign here, you can see it. It's up on the hill there. So that's the Getty Villa. Now up here, this is the neighborhood where I filmed that first video in Malibu. You know, go back to, I'll put the link in the card here. But I mean, obviously this is just a beaut. I mean, it's a beautiful day. Here's a little bit of view of the coastline right here. Just freaking gorgeous. I mean, it's Malibu, it's everything, you know. It's just as beautiful as they make it sound like on TV. But yeah, here, as we get deeper into the territory, you're going to start to see a lot of the damage right along the highway. I mean, this used to all be multi-million-dollar homes right on the beach, and now it's just chain link and you know, concrete slabs. Some rebuilding has begun, but a lot has not even started. So we're coming up here on the entrance to Topanga Canyon. This will obviously take you up and through the canyon here. So you know, we did a video on that should be coming out too. But Topanga Canyon, definitely a very high fire hazard severity zone. Goes up in there, right? You don't really see much development in the hills from this side, but once you get through the canyon and up closer to the top, you start getting into the houses there, and then you come over the other side. You know, that's Tarzana, Woodland Hills, and Encino area, basically on the other side here, and then Calabasas as well. California. Roll up the windows. I'll keep it rolling for a little bit. There's a lot of traffic right here. I mean, you can see, you know, it's reduced to 25 miles per hour because of all the construction that they got going on. So, oops, my blinker's on there, right? So that's pretty much how it is from here all the way to like Zuma Point, or certainly the kind of like the downtown Malibu village, near where Pepperdine is. That's really, actually that's kind of not, it doesn't go all the way to Zuma, but this level of construction does, in this construction zone. I remember when they first, you know, when it very first happened, they had cops here everywhere, man. It was like the easiest speed trap, and it was fish in a barrel for them, catching people speeding along PCH here once they reduced it to a 25-mile-per-hour zone. I mean, I've driven up and down it numerous times since, and like I just cruise because like I don't want to get a ticket, right? But like people will ride your butt. I mean, it's almost quintessential California here. So I know I've recognized that this is kind of turned into more of a travel vlog style series. So I felt like less me standing there in front of the camera and more driving footage might be a little bit more exciting, but I wasn't counting on all this traffic right now. Well, Malibu city limit, there's your sign here. So we are kind of officially now in Malibu. Traffic, oh look, all right, so I'm gonna point the camera right here. You have right here actually is our first example of a house. Okay, you see there's a house right there, and I got to pull up just a bit, but you'll see immediately now here, you see this other house standing to the right of the screen. Well, guess what? In the middle, in between, there used to be another property, and now it's an empty lot with a temporary chain link fence and, you know, a sign stating, hey, somebody's gonna develop it. Look, all you got left is that wooden gate. Now that's a steel frame gate with wood and your stone wall, but look, that's all that's left from whatever house or structure was standing there. And then you've got this house seemingly unscathed, but I know you probably can't tell, it's actually empty. It's being renovated, most likely because there was a lot of smoke damage and toxins. So now you can see here the chain link fence, the temporary chain link fence. These were all other plots of land or homes. You can, I don't know if you can see it from here, probably not, but there's a couple pillars sticking up from the sand. Those probably used to support whatever home was there. And then as we progress here and drive, you'll see there's a couple for sale signs, real estate signs, right? These were all homes. And of course you might find it hard to believe that this close to the beach is a very high fire hazard severity zone, but it sure is. I mean, look at all of these houses that were destroyed. Gonna lift up over the car there. I don't know if you can see the real estate sign right there next to the telephone pole. Over here on the next chain link fence, another for sale sign in the middle, and then another for sale sign hanging next to this telephone pole. And again, look, everything just completely gone. All you have is a burned down trunk of a palm tree left on that property. Over here you've got barely like a couple of brick support walls, maybe for the driveway entrance or something. Here, that's all that's left. That's all that's left. And I mean, these are just house after house after house, right? Look, another for sale sign, another couple of empty plots, and then boom, and to the right there on the screen you see there's houses that were seemingly unscathed. So you know, I don't want this to go on too long, but I think that gives you already a sense here. As I get deeper into Malibu, if the traffic clears up and it's not so stop and go, I'll roll for more segments. But yeah guys, that's it. Malibu is definitely a very high fire hazard severity zone, all the way down to PCH and all the way up and over these hills, all the way into the valley.